Good day, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Viper S of Viperland, and I am finally doing something that I've wanted to do ever since 2021. This here is a list of my top games for the whole year. They're in no meaningful order, and they don't have to be released this year, just played by me for the first time this year. I know the standard for everyone is to do a top 10 list, but I could not get this down below a top 18 when I considered games that left a strong impact on me. So that's what we got. Here we go with Viper's top 18 games of 2023. Hi-Fi Rush caught me completely off guard. It was announced and released on the same day with no other info at a reasonable price. Tango Gameworks was the developer that I knew previously as the devs behind The Evil Within 1 and 2. Hi-Fi Rush is something completely different from those games. Beautifully vibrant, wonderfully stylized, and infectiously rhythmic, with a combat style that's just simply fun to play. As a combination of rhythm games and character action games, the combat wants you to move and attack to the beat. For those like me, who maybe aren't the best at that, the game is still overly playable. Though the game does provide a toggle for an on-screen beat assist visual, the entire game is a beat assist visual. Every attack, every movement, every little bit of background all moves according to the beat. It was a blast to play start to finish, and as an extra tip, I recommend using the Stream Safe OST. In my opinion, it's actually better than the licensed music. From the first moment of the title screen, I knew Sayonara Wild Hearts was going to be a great experience. I heard people mention the game since its release way back in 2019, and everyone seemed to say about the same thing. Don't look up anything, just play it. Whew boy, were they right. The only genre I can think to call this game is playable album music video? I won't say much here beyond that, but I can't stress enough, if you have about an hour of time and want to fill it with a truly unique experience that combines visuals and a banger of an OST, please play Sayonara Wild Hearts. I was a few days late on Baldur's Gate 3 hype. I loved Larian Studios' previous game, Divinity: Original Sin 2, and have been slowly playing through that with the Mod Squad on stream. I kinda figured since I didn't know the Baldur's Gate 3 story, and would likely be playing solo, that it was a game I could add to the backlog and pick up on a later date. Boy, am I glad that I changed my mind. At the time of writing this, I've just barely cleared Act 2, but I already couldn't possibly leave it off of this list. It's been a little while indeed since a party of such memorable characters has been assembled. What could I even say that hasn't already been said to rain praise in this game? There's so many little moments of character dialogue or combat mechanics that just work. The story is interesting and starts huge with the opening moments being as bombastic as they are. Dice rolls and the looming threat of critical failures keep things interesting. One thing I love is that if you have an idea for a class, in all likelihood, you can make it work somehow. Unless you hate RPGs to your core, you should probably play Baldur's Gate 3. Hell, you probably already have. Also, Karlach is best girl. I rarely get to exclaim that this game was meant for me, but I was lucky enough to have two such games come out this year. One of them is Dave the Diver. On the surface, it's a simple game. During the day, you swim around a 2D, slightly randomized ocean and use your spear gun to catch fish. At night, you use those fish to make sushi and run a restaurant. As you get better and dive deeper, your arsenal grows. You get weapons to fight off aggressive fish, you upgrade your spear gun for easier catching, and you start to go through the actual story of the game. On the restaurant side of things, you get challenges that need to be met for picky but important customers. You get farming for ingredients, you can keep fish fresh in aquariums for higher grade materials. It all just flows so effortlessly between those two, and the stunning pixel art is just the icing on the cake. If Dave the Diver was either the diving part or the restaurant part, I'd still likely love it, but the combination is powerful enough to leave a lasting impact on me, and make it so I couldn't possibly leave it off this list. Valhalla is another game that I had heard about for years before playing it. I could recognize a screenshot of it since it was so distinctive in both UI and character design. I knew you were a cyberpunk bartender, but that was about all I knew. In the early parts of this year, I finally sat down and streamed it and quickly fell in love. The character sprites go perfectly with the character writing to make each and every customer memorable. The incentive to pay rent keeps you trying to be as accurate as possible with your drink mixing and as frugal as possible with your purchases. The story actually managed to keep me interested even though all you really see are the insides of the titular bar and Jill's apartment after each shift. Within this framework, all your news of the outside world tends to come from others as you slowly piece together what the world is like outside of those walls. A must-play for anyone who enjoys character-driven story games with a great OST. Late in 2022, I watched a YouTube video by YouTuber Eric Landon RPG called What the Hell is Utawaru Rumono? In it, he went on to describe a game that was half visual novel and half grid-based strategy game. It stuck with me for a few months, and I eventually spotted Utawaru Rumono Prelude to the Fallen on the PSN on sale and nabbed it. Sadly, by that time, both of the Mask games had been removed from the PSN, so I had to acquire physical copies of them, but boy was it worth it. I'm putting all 3 games in one spot on this list because you really do have to play all 3. It's really more of a 120-hour game than it is 3 40-hour games. The game hooked me immediately with the characters in Prelude, and then further got me with the gameplay of the Mask duology. They really do get better as they go, and culminate in an experience so damn good that it's ranked number 5 on the visual novel database. Its place on that list is justified, and if you want a set of games with an OST like no other, characters that'll stay with you, and plenty of twists and turns and emotions along the way, keep an eye out for this series. It often goes up low Steam discounts. Though you remember, you do have to play them in order. Prelude first, then Mask of Deception, then Mask of Truth. Very important. Also, while I haven't seen much of the anime, I hear that they changed some major things, so maybe watch that as a supplement after the games, but not as a replacement for playing them. In 2018, Nippon Ichi Software dropped a game that combined 2 niche genres together. It was part visual novel and part first-person dungeon crawling. Those combined to give us Labyrinth of Refrain Coven of Dusk. Almost like an Etrian Odyssey game with a real story to it. Oh, and a hard M rating. As an Etrian fan, I picked up the game, and while streaming it, it left an emotional mark on me and every single viewer who joined for the journey. As much as we loved that game, we all figured it was a one-time experience. Fast forward to this year. Not only did they make a sequel, but they localized it. Labyrinth of Galeria the Moon Society released on Valentine's Day. In both story and gameplay, it was beyond what I could possibly have hoped for. Both the Labyrinth games are probably the hardest recommends on this list, however, since they are packed with content warnings and some truly twisted things happen in the stories. That said, I don't think any other game I've ever played has caused such a powerful and visceral emotional reaction to a story before. Extra note has to be made for the English voice cast. I legitimately do not think any other English dub comes close to the raw power of either Ryan Bartley's performance as Luca in Refrain, or Savan Menzel and Kat Thomas as Eureka and Nachiru respectively in Galeria. While I had dabbled in the Atelier series before, I would still consider Atelier Ryza 1 as my first real Atelier game. The simple idea of a crafting-focused JRPG that also trended towards smaller interpersonal conflict instead of god-killing to save the world was a refreshing change of pace. Needless to say, I then picked up Ryza 2, and this year the trilogy ended with Atelier Ryza 3, Alchemist of the End, and The Secret Key. Each game did build upon the previous one and improve things, but in my opinion, the improvements between Ryza 2 and Ryza 3 are the biggest and most impactful. The world is now huge. I kept having flashbacks to my time with Elden Ring, where I thought, the world can't possibly get any bigger. Oh, there's a new continent. On top of a huge world to explore, and gather materials from, the cast is also massive. Almost all of the characters from Ryza 1 and 2 return, along with some new additions for a total of 11 playable party members. Each member feels different in combat, and it had me wanting to try each and every one of them out to see how they played. While each Ryza game can easily be taken as its own thing, I feel that a big part of the charm of this trilogy is seeing Ryza and her friends grow and change over time. Atelier Ryza 3 is a perfect endpoint for a very wholesome and enjoyable set of games. I will fully admit that I was very skeptical going into this remake. Resident Evil 4 is one of the best games of all time. It is also available on all modern systems at a reasonable price and still looks good enough visually. It just didn't seem to me like a game in need of a remake. Color me surprised when I ended up having a blast with the Resident Evil 4 remake from start to finish. The addition of the knife to combat, as well as the changes to both enemies and the story, kept the game feeling equal parts new and familiar. The RE engine obviously continues to create visuals that just blow me away, but there was a ton of attention to detail shown here as well. This may be my new go-to example for a perfect remake, something that brings the experience to a newer audience while not invalidating or removing the original. Also, the chapter with Leon and Lewis, best one. Just saying. This was the other game this year that I truly felt was made for me. An atmospheric fishing game with eldritch horrors taking over the oceans? Yes, please. I didn't even know I wanted an eldritch fishing game, but now I don't know how I lived without it. Trying to balance your cargo space along with the equipment you need to catch all the fish, all while trying to fight against the clock and trying not to stay out too late past sundown, is a pleasantly stressful fishing experience. Fishing up new mutated horrors never stops being interesting, and the various locations each feel unique and have a story to keep you interested in them. Exploring and learning about new threats, but also new fishing spots, keeps you on your toes at all times. While I did beat the game, I have been meaning to go back and pick up the few final trophies to snag the platinum. It'd be totally worth it. As someone who has played and loved JRPGs for the better part of their gaming time, believe me when I say I have never played one quite like Live Alive. The remake came out last year for PC and Switch. When I saw it was upcoming on PS5, I applied for a streamer code. Square Enix decided to grace me with a code, and so I got to streaming. From the moment I started up my first character and was greeted with a Street Fighter-esque opponent select menu, I kinda knew this was going to be something special. Each of the characters has their own unique story that takes place in a different time in human history, but each one also feels like an entirely different genre. From a fighting game to a mecha anime to even a Home Alone style trap setup, Live Alive seems to have a bit for everyone. The fact that this was originally on the SNES just blows me away with how creative it was and how criminal it is that we in the West are only now getting a chance to play it. Also, the OST goes so hard. It's amazing. Final Fantasy XVI didn't just have to prove itself to me as a standalone game. It had to rise above the mediocre Final Fantasy XV. Thankfully, with the combined power of Yoshi P, Masayoshi Soken, and the rest of Creative Business Unit 3, they managed to not only rise above, but to fully blow past it. I knew I was going to be in for a wild ride from the first hour or two of the game that we used for the demo. The story, the visuals, the music, all of it showed so much more direction and polish in it than I had seen in 15. While I am a stubborn old man who does actually prefer turn-based combat in my JRPGs, if they're going to go real-time, then this is probably the perfect way to do so. Just embrace it. Go full character action combat. While I won't be showing any footage that wasn't in the demo, I can say that several of the boss fights and big moments of this game are going to stick with me and be hugely memorable for years to come. Also, Torgal is best doggo. Until this year, I had never played any of the big popular walking simulators. While bored one day and looking through the games I had in my PS5 library, I spotted What Remains of Edith Finch, and decided, why not? While I was a bit unsure in the first few minutes of the game, it quickly had me hooked. I know it isn't a super recent game, but I still hesitate to say any more about it. This one really is one of those games I believe benefits strongly from being played as blindly as possible. Needless to say, The story and the visuals kept things interesting from start to finish, and the game doesn't drag or overstay its welcome. After this, I played Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and while it wasn't bad, there's a reason Edith Finch is the one on this list instead. What I expected going into Remnant 2 was a Souls-ish style FPS with optional co-op. While I did indeed get those things, what I didn't expect was the level of commitment to the game and to the world. I didn't expect subtle puzzles that you could easily miss. Weapons, armor, and even entire classes hidden behind layers of the world. I didn't expect to go from a Bloodborne-looking town to a castle made of gold and silver to the future, where high-tech is buried beneath sands and time. The classes I unlocked all felt unique, and each time I went through a new zone, either alone or in co-op, I found new things hidden away that I hadn't spotted before. While it is very enjoyable solo, if you have someone to co-op the game with, or don't mind just joining or hosting randoms, that really does elevate this game so much. I haven't tried the DLC as of this writing, but the friends I know who have played it say it's more of what we already love in the base game. Marvel Midnight Suns has been on my PS5 wishlist ever since the first trailer dropped mid-2021. An XCOM-style strategy game featuring Marvel characters? Not only that, but characters that aren't just the big popular Disney versions of them in movies right now? Oh, and it's made by Firaxis Games, the actual XCOM devs. This was a whole bunch of things I enjoyed in one place. Sadly, when it released in late 2022, I kinda wasn't paying much attention and it flew under my radar. I kept an eye out for sales and waited. And thankfully I didn't have to wait too long, hit a price point where I was happy to try it out, and I am so glad that I did. I can't believe how quickly it hooked me and kept me there. The exploration and party chatter between missions is a great way to break up things, but obviously the real draw is the missions themselves. You bring a party of 3 to a map with various objectives. Some of the roster was characters I knew, and quite a few were new to me as a casual Marvel fan. Each feels totally unique in combat and has pros and cons and synergies with other members. I found myself rarely sticking to one set of 3, and just because I wanted to try more and more ideas and combos. Haven't finished the game as of yet, but the many hours I played left a strong impression on me, and means it had to be on this list. I've been slowly but steadily playing through the Yakuza series ever since seeing the Super Eyepatch Wolf video, Yakuza is stupid and beautiful and I love it. Starting with Yakuza 0 and continuing on the series in numerical order from there has been so much fun. Towing the line between crazy serious and just crazy and enjoying every moment of it. All the while I kept hearing how good 7 was and how it shifted to a turn-based JRPG but somehow it worked. Now that I've finally caught up and am playing like a dragon, I can see what all the hype has been about. I have no idea how Ryuga Gotoku Studios managed to take this long-running open-world crime game with brawling combat and make it work so well as a JRPG, but damn, they pulled it off. It is every bit that I love from turn-based JRPGs while still 100% feeling like a Yakuza game. The side content is goofy and amazing, the MSQ is serious and interesting, and the heat actions are nutty as always. My only hope is that I can finish this up before Infinite Wealth releases in early 2024. It has been such a long time since I've played a survival horror that so captures the feeling of the early PlayStation classics. Sure, plenty of modern survival horror games are still wonderful and worth playing, but Signalis just feels different. The visuals, the movement, the shooting, the inventory system, the save rooms, all of it just perfectly evoked playing early Silent Hill games for me. Don't get me wrong, Signalis has a very unique look and story of its own, but for me it felt nostalgic even though it was my first time playing the game. Finding out at the end that it was predominantly made by just 2 people only elevates the experience higher for me. This is a game that was a passion project and it shows in all of the best ways. Cannot recommend enough if you are a fan of classic-style survival horror games. Alan Wake 2 is a game I didn't expect to be on this list. Not only did I not play Alan Wake 1, but it also came out super late in the year, and I was going to hold off till I had more time to play it. Instead, here I am playing it while writing this script and knowing that it 100% deserves to be on this list. I actually knew from the very opening shot of the game, where it shows what looks to be a deer head split and slightly distorted, only to have the water subtly ripple and show the illusion for what it is. The visual identity for this game is established hard and established early, but then, after playing for a while as Saga trying to unravel a murder and a cult, and the weirdness of a small town, you get thrust into playing as Alan Wake and everything changes. In his areas, the world around is governed by writing and lightness and darkness. Signs tell stories, and a light bulb going on or off can alter the paths available to you. The subway portion of Alan Wake's story is now one of my favorite horror game locations of all time. Even if somehow the game misses the landing on the ending, the journey so far is already something I'll never forget. Also, as a big fan of their previous game, Control, the many references to it and the Federal Bureau of Control are just wonderful. While I'm sure there are many great games that I missed, even considering just the games I played this year, it's already cemented itself as one of the best years for gaming for me. Said, between Grand Blue Rising, Grand Blue Relink, Like a Dragon Unlimited Wealth, Persona 3 Remake, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Quarter 1 2024 is already looking pretty damn powerful. Here's hoping that a list just as strong as this one can be made for the end of next year. Thanks for giving this video a watch, and let me know if you discovered something new from it, or let me know a great game I missed and should play.